Hello everyone and welcome to Nerd Goblin Art. I'm Lula. It is New Year's Eve. That's cool, but I don't do New Year's Eve, so I'm gonna do a painting for you. And we're gonna do it on a canvas board. So there's only one thing we can do. Let's go play. Okay, I have my 8 by 10 canvas board, that's in inches, and I'm using my Lazy Susan. I also have a reference picture that I found on Pixabay. If you're looking for Pixabay, that is the logo, and Pixabay is one of those sites where you can get copyright free images. And if you're a little bit stuck for an idea, I'm not stuck for an idea, I just needed a reference. I wanted to paint a wintry scene, and I wanted it to have a little bit of an interesting colour into it. I'm also going to be using some glazing liquid. It's great stuff, and it's really going to help in the ways of with the cloudy and such effect. And so I'll show you how I'm going to be using that. The first thing though I want to do is I want to give the canvas a black background, and I just sprayed my canvas with a little bit of water just to help it along, and this is 2 coats later. So this is my golden liquid acrylic. It just works a lot nicer when you want to create stars, snow, stuff like that. And I've got my trusty tough brush type thingy, and I'm aiming upwards so the droplets come back down, so I can have a nice starry night. And you know, if you flick your paint too close to the canvas and at speed, that's when you're going to get a different kind of look. So I want it to look nice and gentle, so flipping it upwards was the best option. Make sure you use your cool setting if you are using a hairdryer. I've decided to use only 3 colours for this painting, and that is Phalo Green, and this is the blue shade. And I'm also going to be using Titanium White and Mars Black, and that's all I'm going to be using today. So that's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a really nice and relaxing painting, and well, that's what I hope anyway. So straight in there with the Titanium White and the Phalo Green, but going forward I'm just going to simply call them green, white and black, just for my sanity, because sometimes it takes me a moment to remember what the full names are, and it might be, I'll probably slip into calling them their full names anyway, but there we go. So the glazing medium, I've only ever really used golden. I have used Liquid-X as well, and both of them are fantastic. If you know or use a different sort, go for Rogue if that's what you prefer. You do not have to use any of the same brands, any of the same kind of brushes that I'm using. This is just what I prefer, and if I really like it, I will recommend it. But none of these are all bought by myself. This isn't sponsored by anyone whatsoever. So I'm mixing in that glazing liquid. Of course, the glazing liquid is also fabulous if you want to extend on your paint. So if you're perhaps new to your acrylic resin, what am I on about? Acrylic paint, it doesn't dry as quickly on your palette, so there is that option. But of course, for using it as the glazing, it's it's you can still see your colours beneath. You really do glaze it over, and this is what's going to be perfect for this. It does take me a minute to get used to the feel of the brush and the paint, and to feel a lot more comfortable with what I'm doing. I have been painting for a good few years now, but I've always kind of shied away from painting landscapes. Not really rhyme or reason. I think I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to that. I really enjoy painting what I paint, and that is animals, goddesses and stuff like that. I kind of know what I need to do, but I'm not as confident as I would like to be. So bear with me on that. Now, we're painting clouds, and to me the reference picture that I've pulled up is a bit of a mixture between cloud and almost like a foggy mist. So I'm basically coming into the green and the white using that glazing liquid, and I'm going to treat it as I would anything else, with my layers coming forward. So this is going to be our first layer. I'm not going to worry massively as we come towards the bottom and out to the sides, because there's going to be trees there, but it is a good opportunity to get some practice in, especially if, like me, you've not done this for a while, and I haven't. I have spent the majority of 2025 not painting a massive deal on canvases, and there are reasons for that. I have brought them up a couple of times, and I might talk about it a bit later in the video, but I really want to get back into this, and I will be in the new coming year. It is New Year's Eve. I was about to say Christmas Eve. That was a week ago. It is New Year's Eve when this is coming out, and I have decided to talk a little bit about that whilst I'm painting as well. I love a waffle, and I do. As I'm bringing my brush further up the canvas, I've got a little bit more paint as I'm at the bottom, and then as I'm pulling it up to the top, there's a little bit less of the pigment inside in the brush, but it's still giving that lovely effect of the misty cloud. And this is exactly what I want. I don't want to lose the fact that there's a sky and there are stars, and you can still clearly see the sky in the background and those stars, and that is what we want. And then as I'm coming forward, I'm playing a little bit with adding a bit more of the white, and sometimes putting it back a bit and coming back with a little bit more green on the brush. But essentially, it is what I always talk about, is your layers. So we want our darker behind, and then we're bringing it forward to our lighter spots. And that's exactly how I'm doing it with the clouds as well. You can really play with this when you are creating clouds, because clouds are crazy. I'm sure we've all looked up in the sky, and cloud formations can be absolutely amazing, and they can sometimes even be like, what on earth is going on up there? So you can play, and it is subject to your imagination. You can push your imagination as far as you want, as far as you wish, as much as you like. And you can really go into this, you can put as much detail into it as you like. You can just dance your brush around. And I am essentially doing that. I am dancing my brush across the surface. Now, I am using this is a hog brush, and at the moment it's okay, but when I want to get to more of the brighter pop and not as big an area, I am going to size down and change to a different brush. I do try out using another hog after this one of my smaller ones. I think, because I'm going to give this a dry and come back. Yes, I do try first of all the D brush from Raphael, but it didn't feel quite right. And I say it all the time, use what's comfortable to you. You don't have to use exactly the same brush that I'm using in that moment. You know, we all get comfortable with particular brushes, and I never went to art school, art college or whatnot. I just have always loved creativity, and I started taking up painting like 6-7 years ago now, and really honed in on painting with acrylics. And you end up, you know, when you haven't had somebody tell you how to hold that brush and which brushes you should be using, you do have a tendency of making things work in different ways. And very often, because I have brushes like this Princeton oval mop brush, it is old. I've had it for as long as I've been painting, but I really do look after my brushes. You know, I store them appropriately. I give them a proper clean after being used. I don't just, you know, swill them off in the water that's on my desk. Yes, they get swilled, but then afterwards they go for a proper wash. And at least every month or so, I give them a spa day. The brushes I've been using the most, I'll use proper brush soap and give them a good clean, and I always dry them flat and about a day or so, and then I'll pop them back in the pot. But you really do start finding brushes that work for you and your purposes. And I'm using this one to give my brighter spots and pops here and there, and it's just very enjoyable and very, very relaxing. This I find very enjoyable. And yes, we're going to be covering a lot of this over because of painting the trees in, but having your background, to me, it's important that you don't skirt on it, because, you know, there might be gaps in the paint, you know, the painting you're bringing forward. So you want to bear that in mind. But as I said, it's practice as well. So regardless of whether you're going to be covering that part over, it's still giving you that opportunity to try out a new skill and, you know, really bring it forward a little bit. On the reference picture, it's the scene of the lovely wintry forest, and towards the middle, to the back, there's more of a light spot behind the trees that are in the distance, and that is what I will concentrate on, and you'll see me starting to work towards that shortly, and because I know that those trees that are in the distance are like almost in a clearing, and then we're going to bring forward some trees that are closer to us. So it's an interesting one. As far as I'm aware, I've tried thinking about it, and I don't think I've ever attempted to paint anything like this, and I've definitely not used the green for creating the base of the snow colours, and so that's where I think the colouring is really lovely, and it's interesting to try something a little bit different that I'm not so familiar with, and to see how it works out. And of course, the reference picture is there, but I'm not copying it. I just personally, I wanted something to give me like a beginning, and I want to put my own spin on it. And I think it is so very important for you guys that if you are wanting to learn and you're new to this, is you don't have to copy. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It really doesn't. You're not looking for you're looking for your perfect, not mine. So it's not gonna, if it does also, you know, that's really cool. If it does look like, you know, anyone else's, or like the reference perhaps that you're using. So this is where I'm aware of the colours. So my brightest spot I'm bringing up around here for my trees to sit in front of. So yeah, I'm waffling. I like to waffle, I know. But I think I'm making a little bit of sense. Yes, just the littlest bit of sense. This is actually the second time I've had to try and edit my voiceover. I couldn't talk whilst I was painting at the time because the, you know, busy household, and there were people coming by and visiting because, you know, it's just that time of year, and I kept going into it. But I lost all of my edit for some reason. So yay! So I'm really happy. I'm breathing and doing my breathing exercises as well whilst I'm doing that painting. And it is so important to do stuff like that. You sit back and you relax. So I dried this, and that's why there was a little cut. And I'm definitely working now on the absolute brightest spot coming from behind the trees. And it really does, it looks a bit odd in this instance, but it starts making sense when we start bringing the trees into it, and it really is quite effective. I'm going more into the titanium white now and less of the green, so this is going to give us our pop, and might travel up a little bit here and there like I am there, just to add in some of those clouds. And I'm still making sure to include the glazing medium as well, just because, like I say, I still want that sky to be I still want to be able to see that sky behind and those stars. So yeah, it's looking good. I used to, when I first started doing stuff like this, I try and put like shapes and stuff in the clouds to see if anybody would notice. One or two did, like a little piggy face and stuff like that. That's just what I do. So there we go. You may wonder why I'm using the turntable, which is a Lazy Susan. If you haven't been with me or you're new here, it's just that I have an issue with my spine. I have a few issues with my spine, and I don't want to overextend my shoulders and my arms and cause any issues or more issues. And I just do it so because it's a lot more comfortable for me. So if you do happen to have any, you know, issues with your spine, your back, your shoulders or whatnot, I do recommend getting yourself a Lazy Susan to do your paintings on. So I've zoomed in here just to, well, it gives us a better view. And this is the black and the green, and this is going to give us our first layer for the trees. So these ones are smaller and in the distance, and I'm going to play a little bit back and forth. I do probably spend a little bit more time than needed on these smaller trees, but I was enjoying it, and as long as you are enjoying yourself and, you know, you're thoroughly enjoying the moment, carry on. I that's what I say anyway. So I put the lines in just to give me an idea of where I want trees to be, and then as I start bringing the highlights and the colours forward, I can decide really which trees I want more to the forefront and which ones can be further back, and you can control that with well, like I was saying, your colours, your highlights and stuff. So if you've got a tree that's going to be further back, you don't have to add as many of the highlights in, which you'll see me doing. You can, you know, have a little play with different heights and all as well, and even some different shaped trees if you're confident with that. I figured that I would stick to the fir type trees because in my mind these are a little bit easier when you're first starting out. And you know, I've always struggled with painting like let's say arguments like an oak tree, and you know there's a lot more of a trunk and then detail towards the top, whereas with these types of forest trees, you know, you can really play, and they can be all different shapes and sizes, and then they're not as hard. I know it's easily said if you're not so used to painting and stuff, but they are, I think, the more simpler ones when you are starting out. Yes, that's right. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to stick to that one. I think they are anyway. And it's just basically a case of using a brush that works for you. A lot of people like to use fan brushes for painting trees. I've never got on with a fan brush, as my brain doesn't brain with them. And I've seen many artists doing tutorials with the fan brush, and it's like, it's witchcraft. It is witchcraft. I can't because it is witchcraft because I can't do it. So there you go. So I can start bringing some lighter form of the tree forward now, and I'm doing that simply by going into the white and the green. Occasionally I will come back into the black if I think that I've gone a little bit wonky or something like that. But trees are wonky anyway. I'm wonky too. Me too, tree, me too. And then I can bring forward another highlight again because I want to have the impression that it's been snowing and it looks cold and like that. Whether it's actual snow or whether it's more of a really frosty, icy scene, you know, that's up to the viewer. You know, you can put the idea there, but you don't necessarily need to have it like a confirmation of it. But I really like the idea of this green creating a very cold feeling and of almost like a very magical feeling too. You know, there could be fairies in those woods. That's the thought process I go with. The way I'm using the brush is I'm basically flicking in all different directions, and that is what gives these trees more of the dimension, and it makes them look a little less 2D. And you know, the branches, they are crazy on them. They do, you know, jut out and stick out in all different ways. So, you know, you can really play with that. And again, if it doesn't look quite right, just do it again. Just dry it, let it dry, or even if you don't mind so much, you can just go back over it and do it almost like a wet on wet if need be. So they're looking good. They're looking like you know, there's a few there. I was going to put another tree there, but I think I end up thinking, you know what, I do need a bit more of a shading underneath because they're off in the distance. You know, you want a little bit of an impression that you've got a little bit of snow build up there and maybe a little bit of the shading going on under by the trees. So you can go into your white a little bit more now. So add in the impression of any snow or ice on the edges of the branches. And I say it all the time, don't forget that you don't want to be covering up the previous layers that you've done, not completely. You want that impression that you've got the darker elements, and you know, so you've got your brighter spots and stuff like that. Just try your best not to, you know, feel the need to cover it all up completely. You know, the blocking in stage is the worst part, because you tend to think that it's not working, and it is when you give up. So try and push yourself through and just enjoy it. Give yourself a moment. If you're feeling a little bit stressed by it, sit back and have a look. You know, properly sit back and look at your painting, because sometimes you're so, you know, focused and close up to it, because we end up hunching over. We try not to, and we don't mean to, but we all do it. And sometimes you can't see what you're creating because you're so focused. So make sure you do stuff like that as well, just to make absolutely certain that what you're doing you're okay with. And that process, just, you can get through it. I promise. And I managed to get a splot of water when I was cleaning my brush, but that is okay. Didn't panic. Never panic. As much as possible, don't panic. A pussycat just bounced over me. So I'm coming back in again. Yes, it's a lot of to and fro-ing, isn't it, with the layering? But if you want a nice effect, it is what needs to be done. So I believe at this point I'm barely touching on any of the green, and it's more of the white. So I want to have the nice brighter spot. But have you noticed that we're not losing it too much? We're not losing the colour with that whiter background because of those layers. They're looking after us a little bit, aren't they? So that is great as well. So when you're dealing with, you know, your layers, it really does help to, you know, to separate colours that may be similar. So yes, that's great to go with as well. Just coming in under those trees again, because I want to make sure I've still got that little bit idea of some shadows. Happy with those and the positions, and now I'm going to start on coming more forward with the trees that are a little bit closer and more in our sights. And you know, you don't need to do this with the putting the lines in. You could use a chalk pen, not chalk, you could use watercolour pencils to mark where you want your neck, just for your personal guide. I wasn't as focused as I should have been, and I really should have considered, and I don't know why I had another line here, because as much as I want the dimension with, you know, having those trees are in the background, I end up covering a bit too much of the smaller trees, and I was so proud of that one tree that I painted, and I'm like, no, I've committed now. So never mind. And I think I hyper-focused a little bit too much, and I ended up carrying on painting wet on wet when really I needed to dry it. But again, it's like I say all the time, I'm learning too. And I'm trying to remember stuff as I'm going. So never panic too much. I didn't panic. Honestly, I didn't panic. I have got a cat wafting her tail in my face right now, though. I don't want to see your bottom. Winnie, move. Cats. Yeah, so this is where I start like painting it over, and oh dear me. But it's fine. It all does work out fine. But I was aware that it probably wasn't helping you guys, if you know, in the sense of trying to give you a tutorial. So don't do what I do. No, do what's that thing? I can't think of. I can't remember. There's this old saying, and I remember my driving instructor used to say to me, but it's gone from my head. And you know what I'm like with remembering things and words. Words are hard. Words are very, very hard. Yes. So I'm starting to bring in more of the lighter parts of this tree, and probably a little bit too soon because of doing the other tree, because I've already put another like guide there for another tree. So I'm not really sure what happened at this point, but as I said, it all gets fine. I realise, I dry it, and we tidy it up a bit. And it's having fun. I'll say it and I'll say it again. It's just chilling out and breathing and relaxing while you paint these. It's coming on really well, actually. I wasn't incredibly confident when I first started it, but I did start to find my groove a bit more. And yeah, I did consider potentially putting like a house, like almost like a cottage in amongst this painting, in amongst the trees. But I did decide there's plenty of time and there's other days, and I wanted to concentrate mainly on more of a landscape. Well, I know the houses can be part of a landscape, but I wanted to come into this more simply. So this is where I was like, what am I doing? Lou, what are you doing? But there we are. This is the beauty of paint. You can dry it and carry on. You can keep going. You persevere. So what are your hopes for 2026? I'm not one in general to do like the New Year revolution thing. We don't really do New Year. We haven't for a number of years now, whether it's because we had kids and it was hard to, we used to do big family parties, but that stopped a few years ago. But I do like to think forward and think that, not New Year, new you, because I'm quite happy with me. I'm all right. Physical problem, nothing I can do about that. But, it's the thought of things to come, isn't it? And I spent the majority of the year not really wanting to paint. And that was because my art teacher passed away just over a year ago now. And I found it really hard, and I just felt really sad. And I have talked about this before, so I won't go on about it. But I'm finding the love again for painting on canvases. I've really enjoyed learning more about painting on models and 3D prints and the eco resins the last couple of months. But I have been doing the odd painting on canvas or wood slices, and I really am finding it easier again. And I know that Cinnamon wouldn't have wanted me to not paint at all, because her joy was painting, and teaching the world to paint is what she really, really wanted. So I really want to start bringing that in a bit more to the channel. I know lots of you find me because of the love of epoxy resin, and I'm definitely still going to be doing plenty of the epoxy because I love it myself. But I was thinking of maybe doing at least one paint in a week. You know, comment down below for me, guys. You know, what would you like to see? And you know that I'm much more a mixed media artist than I'm not solely an epoxy resin artist. I am very much a bit of everything. And so what would you guys like to, are you happy to would you be happy having a paint? I know a lot of you lovely subscribers and members have mentioned that you really do love watching me paint, and that's awesome. It really makes my weird little heart smile. It really does. And I'd love to do some justice for what I was taught by Cinnamon, and I would love to carry on a little bit of that legacy of hers as well, with wanting to teach people to paint. So yeah, let me know, because I'm really finding the joy again. Yeah. So there you go. There's what I'm going to say on it. So please do comment and let me know what you'd like to be seeing. You know, if I do like one paint in a week, and and resin and mixed media, things like that. So I've got better into this groove now. After drying and then tidying it up a little bit. And I've also put a lead onto almost to the edge of the painting as well. I quite like that. I do like, when I've painted in the past, I do like to have things that are perhaps going off the canvas rather than having things all square and neat inside the canvas, if you understand my meaning. So I do think that is a good touch to have as well. And again, because these trees are more to the forefront, you could size up your brush if need be, and I will do that over the other side, just because it's a lot easier for me. But I do end up going back down to this same brush again, just for more of the finer detail. I don't go completely fine, you know, fine, but I definitely do a few extra of the little like spikes perhaps coming out, but I'm not one for that absolute perfect detail. I'm really not that kind of an artist. Oh my goodness. So again, if you watched my video, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, where I painted a Christmas tree on a pretty large canvas, and that was to go in my living room, because we've not had a Christmas tree this year, I should say, because of our pussycats who tried to take our tree out last year. So it's basically, I'm using the brush, as you can see there. If you want it on a bigger scale, check that video out so you can see how I position the brush, because it's really difficult to show you on the way I filmed this, and because the brush is, you know, quite small and these aren't. But you know, if you're interested, you know, check that out. But I am using the shape of the brush, and I'm using the tip and then pulling out, and that's why I do end up lifting the brush into this position quite often, because I find it really useful. And I'm putting again in all different directions to give it that impression that there's all these branches coming out in all directions, and then adding in different tones of the colour. And sometimes I'm not even cleaning the brush off, I'm just going, you know, tapping into the green and the white, sometimes not even mixing, so it gives a really lovely bit of colouring and interest really. And you don't have to go down all the way with the brighter spots, because they're going to be a little bit more in the, you know, in the dark and in the shade. And the same with any trees that you've got slightly back, you don't need to go all the way down, but you can still have a few lighter pops I should say, here and there, and that works really well. And I think it's really coming through now, and I really hope you're enjoying it. I never know, I never know, and I think I waffle too much, but a lot of you say you like it. So if you do like this, please make sure that you like and comment. Save it for the end if you like, that's absolutely fine. But if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It costs you absolutely nothing and it means the world to me. I do an actual little happy dance when I get any new subscribers. It helps my channel be seen, it helps the algorithm, and anything that I make on the channel, it goes back into the materials and such that I need, even for paying towards like the Suno for any of the music that I use, for Canva for creating thumbnails and stuff like that, and even my editing material, you know, my editing suite. So, you know, it really does help. I'm not a huge channel by any means, so it really is helpful. I also have channel memberships, and going forward within the new year, Mr. Goblin is guaranteeing to be doing a members exclusive. He started in December with a beautiful bust of a Geishan, a lady, and it's absolutely beautiful. He will also be doing a regular video per month as well for everybody to see if you're not a member, so you'll still get to see one, but he is going to be doing a members exclusive, and I will be as well. Whether that is painting, whether it's resin, we don't know yet, but I will be doing a members exclusive video per month. And of course, members always get at least one sneak peek video before everybody else, and pictures and such as that. So I'm just figuring out where I want the linings of any like hilly bits, and where the snowdrifts really, just to give me an idea where I am putting the next trees, and it just helps me a little bit. So there we go, and I'm happy with those trees on that side, so I'm going to move over to this side. And lessons learned. I'm not going to go way too close to the edge, so I don't end up cutting in too much to those smaller trees, remembering that as the tree comes down, in general with the fir type trees, they're much more bushier towards the bottom, so I've given myself a bit more space to play this time. So I'm glad that I did consider that. It is also time that I size up my brush, although I haven't considered that at this point. I believe I get the majority of this tree in, and then I'm like, hang on a minute, I'll be here all day. So I do size up a little bit and then size back down again. you can really have fun with the shapes of the trees as well, because not trees aren't always like straight up. Sometimes they're a little bit bendy and wonky, so you know, always bear that in mind. And sometimes they're missing bits of branches and stuff. It's, you know, Mr. Goblin in my last live, he suggested I should try and do a Bob Ross tutorial. But he was like a proper ass, you know. I love watching Bob Ross. He is one of my comfort watches, but he was like proper at it. He's like uses those big old brushes, and you know, and you look away for a second and look back, and there's this amazing landscape. Wow, I just don't think I've got it in me. Maybe we'll revisit it in a couple of months when I've been definitely doing much more painting, but that might be interesting to do. But can you imagine? I would love to do a mountain now, like he does them. I should really start like paying attention, shouldn't I? Oh my goodness. And you gotta laugh, because when I was painting this, Mr. Goblin was like going back and forth. He was doing a little bit of sorting, and you know, he'd look over my shoulder now and again, and he was like, are you going to be putting Krampus in the distance and stuff? And it took a lot actually for me not to go there, you know, to actually just to keep it as is. Although that would be fun. It would be fun including some kind of character. Even Bigfoot. Bigfoot would be cool. Just the silhouette of Bigfoot in the distance, perhaps. But yeah, I was terrible for stuff like this when I'd be watching Cinnamon's tutorials. You know, I'd often comment that it needs like a TARDIS. But there we go. So I've sized my brush up a little bit just to give me a little bit more help, because these trees are a little bit bigger on this side even. And this brush is okay. This is like a pointed cat's tongue, or is it? I can't remember now. I don't think it is actually. I don't think it is. Ignore me. But it's pretty good for flicking out and creating almost like a fur. This is what I like using this brush for. But it was great for bringing in more of a shape towards the bottom. But I did definitely need to go back to the smaller brush to give me a little bit more control. Really taking that shape and bringing it out. Once again, back to bringing in some of those lighter tones. So coming more in with the white and introducing that to the green with a touch of that Mars black. It's really interesting that just 3 colours are giving us this lovely it's just, I'm always astounded. It often astounds me that sometimes you can be working on something and then you get to the end and you're like, oh my goodness, I did that. That was me. And sometimes I don't even know how I got there. That's really cool. It's fun. It is fun. So definitely not as much. I don't feel I had as much control at this point with the size of this brush. Whether it's because I'm a little bit out of practice, I'm not entirely sure. So I definitely go back to that smaller brush, which I believe it's a Nick Pro. I've been going between using the Nick Pro brushes and the Raphaels, and just, you know, that's just proof, because the Nick Pros are a little bit cheaper and not as costly, and you know, it really is a case of, you know, definitely using what works best for you. Using my hairdryer, because I really needed it to be dry at this point, because I didn't want to be putting my wrist or hand into any wet paint, and bringing in a few more of the smaller wisps of tree, basically, for your pines to be coming through. And this brush definitely gave me that control that I needed back a bit. I think I was being a little bit too uniform with that larger brush, and that's not what you want to do. You want to make it a bit more what's the bit, untidy. You want it to be less organized, so it doesn't look like you've tried so hard. I know I don't make any sense. Things make sense in my head, but I don't think I make sense when trying to talk, like, through my mouth. That's what she said. Yeah, so here we go. We're really getting there. We're cooking with gas. It is cool, hip and groovy. We've got the lighter spots coming now, and bringing more forward in the lighter colour. And of course, again, if you're not happy with a certain aspect, just go back over it and you can tidy it up. There is no need to worry. It really isn't. Painting, it should be giving you joy. It shouldn't be stressing you out. You know, if it is stressing you out, like I said, take a step back and have a moment. It should be enjoyable. And, you know, I fell into that trap. I have fallen into the trap over a couple of months ago. When you're creating videos on YouTube, you'll sometimes fall into the trap of looking at, like, analytics, horrible thing, and seeing that maybe you're not picking up as many views as you'd hoped, and you feel a bit rubbish about that. But then you have to realize that to get a view, somebody, I believe, only has to be watching your video for about 15 seconds or something like that, and it counts as a view. What's important is that your videos are being watched. That is more important. And that's what I've learned, that actually I may not have like 1,000 views on a video, but I've definitely got the views, which is awesome. And that really is something important. And I really hope that other creators who do crafts, because crafts, I think, is a harder YouTubey thing to break through, because of course you get your gaming channels, you've got your bloggers and stuff like that, or vloggers, you know, and the crafting world is, I think it's harder to break through in the, you know, with getting your watches and stuff. But you get such wonderful subscribers, and they come again and again to watch you. And I just decided a couple of months ago that, you know what, if I only get 4 people who watch every time, I'm going to be happy, because I'm obviously doing something for them. And that is something else I'm going forward with during 2026, is that I'm going to be content. You know, I gotta think, like, why did I start doing this? You know, and it wasn't for, it certainly wasn't for the money, because it is hard to earn. But I'm doing it because I want to inspire. And if I'm only inspiring a small amount of people, do you know what? I can live with that, and I'm happy with that. And I'm not gonna fall into the trap of worrying over the number of subscribers and such. And I really hope that some of you who are creators, and I know who watch, I really hope that you take that on board as well. Do it for you, you know, create, make the videos for you. And, you know, subscribers and getting your subscribers, and that's just a little added bonus. It's just great, you know, the friendships and new people and your people that you managed to start finding during the process. That's the awesome bit, because I have made some wonderful friends over the past year and a half, and it's great to get to know like-minded people that perhaps aren't, you know, they don't like going out just like you. They don't really like people in just like you. It's quite a creative thing. I've noticed many of the creative sorts really prefer their own company. So yeah, that's where I'm going to be going for. So I'm bringing in the final parts of this painting now, and again I'm just playing back and forth with some colours to decide how I want to go with this. I don't want to take away any of the background colour, you know, basically my shadows, and I can bring them back in a little bit by adding a mixture of the green and the black. And then once I'm happy with where my shadows and such are lying, I can start bringing in the brighter spots. So in that clearing, we've got more of a brighter spot. And I would think, because by now I have kind of, I haven't really looked at the reference for a while now. It's there, and it gave me my idea, it gave me a starting point, but I've basically just followed my brush for the rest of the time. So I imagine that, you know, because this snowbank is a little bit closer to us, it's going to be a bit more of a pop in colour to us. So I'm just brightening that coming forward, and I'm doing that by exactly the same way as I did the clouds. I've started off with the darker base, and now I'm bringing it forward with lighter pops, going less into the green and more into the white. And if I'm not so happy with it, I can of course knock that back again, and I will go back and forth as well until I'm more or less happy with what is being created, but always being mindful that there should be shadows under certain parts of the trees, and we need to create those slightly lighter spots. But we can also have a few, almost like a dry brush kind of thing, going back and forth. You can do a little bit of dry brush with the white into the darker areas, like you can see there down on the bottom left, but don't necessarily need to add the brighter pop. We're just giving it the idea that there is snow there. And I'm going to start bringing in the brighter pop to that clearing as well. And it really is quite effective when you do it this way, and then dance just as we're coming around here, because I want that a little bit more in shadow, but it still gives us the impression that it's there. So I do start to realize that I kind of came in a little bit too hard by here, and I've created too much of a line that I can clearly see that it is like a line that I've painted in there, and I want to blend it in a little bit more, and that's absolutely fine because I can just go back to the colors that are already on my palette, and I can reintroduce a little bit of the darker color and really blend it in a bit more. So never, like I always say to you guys, never worry too much, because the acrylics are really forgiving. So you can do just as I've just done, is bring in that slightly darker and then blend it in, and it really does get that really bolder line that I had created. That's gone, and I'm much happier with that. So now that that layer is dry, I am just gonna try, I'm just working on giving one more bright pop to that clearing, and any other little bits where in my mind I've got some lighter spots, and this is simply just the white and not adding in any of the green. And again, working around there. I want it to be known that there is snow there, but I also want it to be known that there is shading. And then once I'm happy with this part, I can come back into using the glazing medium, because I still want to have that impression that the trees in the distance have that like low cloud fogginess about them. So we can give that covering and bring it up a little bit, but using that glazing medium, so we don't end up losing all that hard work of those trees in the first place. Be brave, be brave with it. It's a little bit scary doing this bit, I think, because you've done so much work into it, but the glazing medium, just trust it. And I can bring it up a little bit. I can bring in a few, little brighter spots here and there, and really create this aesthetic. Is that the right word? Aesthetic? It might not be, but still, I know what I mean. I'm sure some of you will know what I mean, because, our brains brain quite similar quite often. So yeah, and I'm just making sure that I've got a few extra little pippity pops of the lighter white higher up as well, because as I said, the acrylic paints do dry darker, even the whites will. So once they're settled, and because we're just coming back into it, we can just add a few extra pops here and there, just for a little bit more of a point of interest. So there we go. I've created what I think is a nice low cloud fog type effect. I think that works. I really do. And it is important to know when to stop, because sometimes you could go on forever with some of these paintings. So I was trying my best not to try and keep going where the clouds were concerned, but this I'm really happy with, and I really hope that I've helped inspire you or give you a little push to give something new a go, because I definitely haven't done something like this, and I'm super proud. So give it a go. You never know. And once it's dry, you can always check if you think, oh, I could do with a lighter pop here and there, but it's not always necessary. But I do love the colours. I really do. And I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed that it's worked. So I always forget, I always do this, but I always forget to sign stuff. But I've actually, for once, remembered. I'm trying to be more mindful of that. So I like to kind of hide them a little bit. Sometimes I like to disguise them, my signature. And I think it's fun sometimes to have it like hidden almost in a way. But there we go. I have signed it and I'm happy. Thank you for watching. Love you and stay weird.
The nerd goblin whispers in my ear, stay weird, stay wild, no need to fear. She molds her dreams with resin and clay. Whimsical wonders brighten the day. Stay wonderfully weird, let your colors unfold. Frogs and dragons, stories untold. Crocodiles dance in a resin sea. Stay weird, stay wild, stay beautifully free. She paints the night with the dragon's flame. In her hands the world's never the same. Frogs in hats and crocodiles grin, each creation a spark where dreams